Friends, let's just take a moment. Let's think about something that often feels, well, a bit counterintuitive, maybe. We're always told, take control, grab the reins, be the captain of your ship, that sort of thing.
Right. That's the dominant message, isn't it? Be strong, be in charge.
Exactly. But what if? What if real strength, genuine power, isn't found in holding on so tight? What if it's actually in letting go?
That really resonates with a much older kind of wisdom, I think. Like the words from Proverbs, trust in the Lord with all your heart.
And lean not on your own understanding.
Then in all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. It's not about being weak, is it? It's a powerful act of faith, really.
Choosing to trust something beyond just what we can see or figure out ourselves.
Precisely.
So that kind of leads us to the big question for this deep dive, doesn't it? What does it really mean to trust like that, to surrender? And how could that perspective, maybe paradoxically, give us strength, give us peace, especially when life just, throws curveballs?
Yeah, the uncertainties, they're always there.
And today, we're not really looking at big headlines. It's more about reflecting on some experiences, some human stories that might shed light on this.
These are stories that feel familiar, I think. They give us a glimpse into this idea. Like, think about this couple in the Philippines.
Okay.
Back in 2025, a huge typhoon hit. And it wasn't just, damage to their home. It completely wiped out their small business, their livelihood. Gone.
Wow. Utter devastation.
Completely. And in that moment, what do? Your own resources, your plans, they're just washed away. They had a choice.
Right.
And they chose prayer. They chose to lean on their community for support, for solace.
And that's where it gets really interesting, isn't it? Because their first reaction wasn't, okay, let's map out a 10-step recovery plan.
No.
They actually said, didn't they, that they consciously decided to, quote, let go of what we couldn't fix and focused on faith.
Exactly that. A conscious shift.
And then fast forward a few months.
Oh.
Something pretty amazing happened.
Yeah, the business didn't just kind of struggle back. It actually started to thrive, became even stronger than it was before the storm.
It's that paradox you mentioned.
It really is. When things were completely outside their control, their strength didn't come from trying harder to control it. It seemed to emerge from surrendering, from relying on faith, on each other, on their community, precisely because their own ability was just overwhelmed.
It suggests there's another kind of power, maybe. Something that opens up when we hit our limits.
I think that's right, when we acknowledge those limitations.
Okay, so that's one story. And then you mentioned another one from Chicago.
Yes, a woman there. She made a really significant life change, left a stable career track to become the main caregiver for her mother, who was getting older.
A really compassionate thing to do.
Uh-huh.
I imagine that brought a lot of questions. Financially, for sure.
Absolutely. Huge uncertainty. And it raises that basic question, doesn't it? Where do we find our stability when the usual safety nets, like a steady job, aren't there anymore? For her, as things went on, she described this: consistent experience, needs would arise, financial needs, practical needs, and somehow they were met, often in ways she couldn't have predicted. Unexpected sources of support seemed to appear just when needed.
So it wasn't just a lucky break, a one-off thing.
No, she described it as a pattern, a consistent meeting of needs that, for her, felt directly linked to her trust, to her situation.
And it went deeper than just the finances, didn't it? I recall she mentioned something about purpose.
Yes, exactly. She said this whole journey, while challenging, led her to a deeper sense of purpose. It wasn't just about getting by, it reshaped her understanding of her life.
So if we put these two stories side by side, the couple after the typhoon, the caregiver in Chicago, very different situations.
On the surface, yes.
But there's this common thread, isn't there? This act of surrender, letting go of the need to have everything figured out, everything under control.
And crucially, it's not about being passive. It's not resignation.
Right. It feels more like redirecting your energy, shifting your reliance from just your own strengths, which is always finite,
to something bigger, something more encompassing. Yeah.
Okay, let's dig into that distinction you made. Giving over instead of giving up. Can we explore that a bit more?
Yeah.
Because that feels really key.
I think it is. Giving up, well, that sounds like defeat, doesn't it? Like losing hope, powerlessness.
Yeah, it's negative, final.
If it's surrender in the way we're discussing it, or maybe giving over, that feels like an active choice. It's deliberately releasing your tight grip on the outcome.
But with hope.
Yeah.
With expectation, maybe?
Exactly. With trust that there's a bigger picture, a guiding hand, even if you can't see the next 10 steps clearly.
Okay. So for anyone listening right now, how might this apply? It sounds like a daily choice almost.
It really does. An opportunity, perhaps, to swap some of that anxiety we all carry.
For assurance.
For kind of inner assurance, trading fear for faith, loosening that white-knuckle grip on control.
In favor of connecting to something. Well, something greater than just us.
Thinking back on those stories, what stands out for the couple when their own efforts were just impossible right after the storm?
Their focus went to faith.
Yeah.
To community.
Right. And for the woman in Chicago, facing that financial vulnerability, her purpose deepened. That itself became a source of strength.
Neither of them found the answer by just trying to control things harder.
No. It seems like by admitting I can't handle this all myself, by acknowledging our human limits,
we open up space. Space for things we couldn't have engineered on our own.
That's how it feels. It's in that very act of surrender, letting go of that need for absolute control, that a different kind of strength can actually start to flow.
And that connects back to the Proverbs verse, doesn't it?
It does. That ancient wisdom suggests that as we cultivate this trust, as we learn to lean, to submit, our paths will be made straight.
Which isn't a promise of, an easy, bump-free road.
Not at all. But maybe it's a promise of guidance through the bumps. Direction through the complexities when we choose faith.
So as we sort of wrap up our thoughts here, that core idea keeps coming back. True strength. Maybe it's not always about the force we apply.
Maybe it's measured more by our willingness to yield, to be guided.
Redefining strength.
Yeah.
Not as that rigid grip, but as the courage to surrender, to trust.
And that invitation, it's there every day, isn't it? The choice is always present. Assurance instead of anxiety.
Faith instead of fear.
Connection instead of that illusion of total control. And those stories we talked about.
The business rising from the ashes.
Provision appearing when needed. They really point to the power in that shift, that surrender.
Think about that couple again, facing what looked like the end of everything they'd built, hope dimming.
But choosing prayer, choosing community, giving over their need to fix it right now, opened a door to renewal they couldn't have foreseen.
And the woman in Chicago, selfless act, yes, but facing real fear about the future.
And yet she found support, provision, and maybe even more importantly, that deeper purpose became her anchor.
So let's be absolutely clear. This surrender we're talking about, it's not giving up on life. It's not apathy.
No, it's that giving over, handing over our desperate need to control, but doing it with hope, with anticipation.
Which brings us to a question, a really personal one for everyone listening.
Yes. What's the one thing, maybe just one thing right now, that you're holding on to so tightly, wrestling with, trying to control every aspect of?
What might you be invited to release and trust?
That's really the takeaway thought, isn't it? True strength isn't clinging to control. It resides in surrendering to guidance.
And the reflection question to sit with, what is that one thing you might be holding on to that you're invited to release and entrust?
Just take a moment with that. Let it settle.
Maybe, just maybe, by thinking about this, by considering trust and surrender, we can start to see strength differently and find a deeper, more lasting peace in our lives.